Welcome to the world of steel, tank force, a BraveTale game. This might be the best offline tank game available on Android, or at least mobile devices. It is a complex game. It may not look like it from the size of the download, which is only about 100 megabytes. I have touch turned on to try to help you in finding your way around this game. How about we go back a screen? There's a how to play there. That is where you will start the game the first time you download it. I suggest when you do, you open up the game and you'll go in there and it'll give you some instructions on how to play the game. I will do this video to try to expand upon that in this beginner's guide. However, if you accidentally go into there and you allow it to play completely through, you may find some of your preferred settings have changed. So it's a good idea to keep track of your settings by either knowing them very well, taking a screenshot of them, or writing some of them down. Of note here, you can see I've got the resolution set to only 2/3 of the value possible with this game. I have done that on a Samsung Tablet S Galaxy Tab S6, which is supposed to be a very powerful device. This game tends to chew up its processor as it does for just about every Android device, due to the fact that it is requesting resources from just about every system on the device. I do get delays with this device. I find I even get more delays on this device than I did on some devices that didn't record as well on benchmarks. So I'd like to take you into a battle with the starter tank here and make some notes. I'll be talking over this complete video. The video may seem just a bit slow. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot of good information on this tank game, so I want to do this video to expand upon that. You'll notice down below here, it says there are 4 categories of battle. The offline I've never been able to get into. I had this game on my device for about 6 to 9 months before it became playable. I found it was such a good game. I may actually be biased towards this game, and I've never been able to get into the online battle. It has always been locked. The world boss, I've got a separate video on that. It's not a fantastic video. It's rather lengthy. There you go in and you battle against a battleship with this tank, and you have a companion tank. You'll start the game with only this tank, which is not a very good tank, and you'll need to upgrade it. You notice I've practically got the whole thing upgraded. With all the tanks, you'll find it may steer slightly different on different devices. There are 2 other categories of battle here. There's a survival mode. You can play that with this tank once every 24 hours, and you'll get a companion tank. Up here in the top left, you'll notice I have a companion tank. When you have 2 tanks, you'll be able to go in there with 2 tanks. It's best to assign your best tank as your companion tank, and you can also battle with your companion tank by assigning your second best tank to be the companion tank when you do. However, when you start the game, you'll be limited to missions. As you note here, there are 6 stages of missions. Each stage has 12 missions in it. If I go back here, you'll notice I do not have them all complete. I am only, here I'm going to hit ID way up in the corner there. I'm only relatively small way into this game. I'm a few months into the game. I've got 16,000 kills, of which most of those were done by playing survival mode. I'll get into that in a minute for why I do that. So let's go take our starter tank with a fairly good companion tank that's been heavily upgraded to some extent by having very good maximum firepower and maximum armor. However, it does not have the other characters very well upgraded, so it should allow me to go into one of these battles and do it. I'm going to do the starter battle just so you can see what this tank looks like on the battlefield. Up top here, it says Mission 02. What that means, the mission will have 2 enemies in it. Each of these missions has 2 waves of tanks, so it means there'll be 1 tank will be 1 wave.
1 shot is all I need. Enemy spotted.
And the other tank will be the other wave. Now, due to our central thing here, you can see there's a little red arrow perhaps. There's also a red flag over top of the enemy.
Orders.
There are 2 controls besides the steering of both the turret
Let's go.
and the drive. And you can actually tell what direction you're driving in due to the status of your armor down here in the bottom. Oh good. My companion tank took out his turret. I was hoping that was going to last a little longer. The controls are somewhat simplified in this game. There are not a lot of options to be pressing all over the screen looking for different types of armor. Now I'm going to go back into the same kind of thing, except I'm going to use a slightly better tank. This is a tank the enemy does not get a chance to use. You cannot upgrade it when you get it. I would suggest not paying to get this tank because it is not going to be much better than most of the other tanks you'll be able to get within a couple of months. It has reasonable firepower and it has some armor. But it is a slow tank, so let's go take this onto the battlefield. We'll do something a little trickier here. Whoops, back. Let's go into stage 1, mission 3. This should bring up a few more enemy tanks. It will last a little longer. It might allow me. There are only 3 enemy tanks, which means 1 wave will have 1 tank. And the other wave will have 2 tanks. You'll notice the trees are deformable. Not all the trees. Well, the trees are. There are some small shrubs that do not fall over. None of the buildings fall over. Not even the awnings. Or the stairwells. Okay. My companion tank just took out his turret. So we've got a little time to run around here. Here, zoom is toggle in, toggle out. And you've got a fire button. You do not have a choice of weapons. That does tend to speed up the game some. I am not showing strategy at this point. However, I will say, the battlefield we're on, there is only 1 battlefield in the game. It comes up in both the survival mode and mission mode. So when you start playing the game, build a map of what looks familiar, because there's a cordon or a fence around a portion of the battlefield. Let's take care of that one. I'm going to go get a faster tank. You notice the payout was not very high. When you repeat these missions, the payout is not very high. That is the reason why it's best to do survival mode in this game, even though it does limit you only to using a tank once every 24 hours. Let's go play with the smaller Sherman here. I'm going to go into something a little more difficult. Stage 2, mission 2. You notice there are going to be 6 enemies. They'll be a little more powerful. And they'll be in 2 waves. Now this game, as I said, was small. It is all about space. Everything spins around, everything moves. This is perhaps as good as many offline games for the dynamics of the game. The engine will even cause your aim to vibrate at some points. And due to the complexity of the game, where you get to rough terrain, such as I just found here, it's somewhat rough. I hope you can tell it's a little bit rough. If you get many tanks going over this or other places where it is rough, it will use up more processor power than, say, if you're over a flat area, which will slow your device down. And you'll notice a little bit of lag. You'll have to deal with lag no matter when you play this game, perhaps except for with the smaller tanks, which are very slow.
One shot is all I need.
Now, I'd like to draw your attention to my green armor symbol down here. You might notice there is a little hole in it. There's not actually a hole in my armor. I have armor on that side of my tank, the right side of my tank, which has been weakened. If the enemy tank were to completely remove the armor on that side, it can shoot at the bar that's down below, which is my core armor. When my core armor is gone, my tank dies, just as each of the other enemy tanks do. That's what that red line is above the tank. There's a little red flag and there's a red bar. Now, I hit him there. I can hit him in the turret again, and he'll be dead. However, that doesn't happen all the time. If you come up against a very strong tank, it may take several shots to take out their core armor or their turret. As I was saying, this is a somewhat faster tank. You notice the payout wasn't that much better there. It would take a lot of repeats. You can actually do that with tanks up to maybe this one, which is about halfway through the game. This tank will take 1.7 million thereabouts to completely upgrade. The one here is only about 500,000 or so. So these are only starter tanks. Now, let's go back in and do another battle. We'll go to stage 3, number 2. The payout should be slightly higher for number 2 than number 1. Notice there are now 7 tanks we'll be battling against. Okay, we've got some fairly heavily armored tanks. These are medium tanks we're going up against in the game. And the instructions on how to play the game will tell you where to shoot at the tank where it has lighter armor. You notice you can actually play this game fairly well. You can shoot all the way across the battlefield. If you hold your tank steady for a small period of time, your accuracy is much better. I find the game has a funny way sometimes of handling momentum. It takes a little while to settle down. Okay, where'd I hit him? I hit him in the front. As I was saying, these tanks are a little heavier. The green indicated I had already been through that portion of his armor. And I've got a tank chasing me. Now, the other thing is, the enemy usually, almost always, not always, goes for the nearest tank to it. So if you've got a very powerful companion tank, and you're further from the enemy than it is, they'll try to target your companion tank. And if your companion tank is hidden in a very good fortification, it gives you a free distant shot at the enemy without the enemy firing back at you. That is perhaps a little bit of strategy in the game. Now I'm going to just run away from the tank that's indicating it's over there somewhere. It looks like it's in the maze of the buildings. I want to find the edge of the battlefield here. There we go. As I was saying, there's one great big battlefield. Other times in the game, you'll get that fence. It'll be way over here somewhere, or way almost just over that hill up here. So this battlefield is about 1/8 or 1/7 of the whole total battlefield. So each and every time you play this game, it is a little bit different. And you notice there are obstacles around. Like I said, there was a maze over here of buildings. There are 3 industrial areas. This is the largest industrial area I'm heading towards here. There are 2 villages, each of which has its own characteristics, and hiding places. Now, this game is very good for... We've got a heavy tank. That is a cromwell. It has very good armor. It is not a very good tank to play because it is very slow. I would suggest not buying that tank when you get the option to. It doesn't cost a lot to buy it. It costs $1 million to upgrade it. Let's go into the fleet of tanks. It's the next tank up to this from the Sherman I just showed you. It has more firepower. It has very good firepower, but it has slow fire rate, not very good accuracy. I'm not going to... And when you get to this tank, you get a very good tank when it is upgraded. It is almost as good as the other T-34. It's not as heavy. It doesn't have as much firepower. But these are perhaps the 3 most important tanks in the game. You have to play quite a considerable amount of time to get off to the very powerful tanks. I have never actually gotten to any tank beyond this one. And I got to the leaderboard on at least one occasion, being the top handful. So I'm not going to deal too much with those. If you get that far into the game, you'll know as much about the game as I do. This is an odd tank. It doesn't cost a lot to upgrade. It's 1.57 million, no, 170,000 or something like that to upgrade. It's worth upgrading. It has very poor accuracy. It doesn't have an awful lot of firepower, but you'll want to get this tank. And when you get this tank, this is a tank you'll find fun to play, but it doesn't have a lot of firepower. It's like a pea shooter, and its accuracy is not so good because remember how I told you the tank rocks even with the motor? Pistons going up and down? This has a very short track on it. It does a lot of that. The accuracy is also not that good, as you can see over here, but you get a very good fire rate. There is a hazard with this tank. If you look here, the steering and the speed, the steering can go more than 10 times the speed. I find if you do that, I have not got the steering upgraded highly on this tank, it will handle wonkily, such as if you're trying to go in a straight line, it will weave back and forth. And this tank you have to play to a certain level before you can unlock it, level 5 or level 20 or something. By the time you get there, you'll already have, say, the Sherman here. And what this tank will primarily be used for is you'll go into survival mode. And it will give you another opportunity to earn a couple of thousand game coins in survival mode. Your starter tank, upgrade it. Just plain get it upgraded. You'll probably play it for ages, and even after you'll know it's not a very good tank. But upgrade it and it will improve. It does not cost very much to upgrade. It's $20,000 to upgrade the tank completely, which you should be able to do in a little over a week. So I'm going to take this tank, the Panther here, and I'm going into survival mode. This should last a little longer. This match will end when your tank dies. Notice it says wave up here up top. It does not say how many tanks there are because there is an infinite number of tanks. It the waves start out with fairly weak tanks.
Negative. No. No. Sir, yes, sir.
And you notice the commentary over top of this game. There's nothing you can do to turn it off.
Hold him up.
You can turn the sound off completely, in which case all you'll get is like a little grunt when an enemy tank has an option to shoot at you. That's about it. You do not hear the shots. You do not hear the enemy shots hitting your tank. It's not a great option. I would have liked this game to have an option to turn off that commentary, as you would probably like with my commentary. But there is no such in this game.
Orders. Target eliminated.
Okay, my companion tank shell arrived there before mine did. You might have seen a little notice up here in the corner saying I missed or something.
Enemy down.
And you notice I'm running over trees in this one. Because it lasts so long, it helps to run over the trees and remove them from the battlefield. It may also help with your processor's ability to play the game, but I can't confirm that. And notice we definitely are on the same battlefield. And there's one of the villages there. There's an industrial zone
Right away,
just
sir.
beyond the fence over there. And I found the fence again. You know what? We've got a fairly good battlefield here. I bet you this fence goes
Hold him up.
all the way around. That I lucked out. The shot actually hit him in the turret. It said it had the turret targeted, but you'll notice with the trees in the way you can't tell which way he's moving, and there is a time lag between when your shell will arrive at the enemy. And it can also say he's targeted when you're just close. So I'm going to run over a few trees here and open up some sections of the battlefield.
Orders.
This is actually a very good strategy to use in the game. You take out the enemy's turret if you've got a tank that's powerful enough to do that. If you take out two enemies' turrets and your companion tank doesn't get them right away, your companion tank will run around sort of trying to keep from being fired upon them, and you'll have quite an amount of time to actually go clear the battlefield. Okay, I only cleared a small section of the battlefield. Normally when I play the game, I clear much more of the battlefield, but I don't want this to go on too long.
Enemy spotted.
Okay, so you can see the red arrows come up every time there is an enemy tank near the center of where the aim point is there. And you have an option to vary your targeting mechanism some, but you'll notice there are two different circles there. There's a sort of a two arcs, and there's a circle to say when my gun is actually aimed that way.
Go, go.
There's a delay. That's part of the momentum thing. Many of the calculations going on in this game, such as the circles for when you're turning around. If you notice some racing games, if you get the option to, you'll see they're pretty much run in like kaleidoscopic tubes with the game just running down sort of a tube going towards your target, which I assume is much the way this would be designed. Now, there are many options to vary the graphics in this game. As I said, I've got the resolution set low. You do not have an option whether you get shadows or not. If it says you got the graphics level turned up high enough, you get shadows, or you don't.
Clear. Enemy spotted.
Or you get grass, or you don't. You cannot turn the grass to a different level. Now you notice that tank had a turret that was fairly high powered. I did not take out his turret, just as his Sherman would. Now if I put another shot into his turret will now show green, that there is no armor there, and I'll be shooting into his core.
One shot.
You can also get a shot sometimes into the core of the tank without actually hitting the turret or hitting the side armor if you're above the tank, or you're shooting from below the tank when he's coming over a hill. Now, this game has in-app purchases. I would suggest perhaps using the in-app purchase to remove the advertisements. If you want, go for the smaller in-app purchases. It has very high price rates on its in-app purchases, which will probably is what caused the fact this game does have some hack options.
Let's go.
I don't play the hack options. I like to work my way up through the game, even though this is the third time I've done it. You might have noticed between matches there's a thing saying connecting to the Play Store. Well, it doesn't save your game progress. It just saves the leaderboard information. Okay. So now you can see if I go into this building area where the buildings are non-destructible, I've got like a little fortification, but I should have been watching to make sure where the enemy are. There are all kinds of them around. There's one less of them. And you can actually see that there is a decent-sized battlefield. This game is well optimized for the space it is contained in. Because all you've got, you don't have a variation in your zoomability of your aim. You've got a toggle in and a toggle out. You don't need a great big battlefield because there is a lot of geometric variety in this battlefield. And by cordoning off just parts of it, it adds to the variety considerably.
Negative. Come on.
Now you might have noticed once it turned white, I should have been able to shoot.
Go.
Yes, there is noticeable delay in this game. I've seen other reviewers of the game in the Play Store mention there is delay. I don't know whether they're actually seeing that kind of delay or whether they're seeing, as I said, the momentum delay earlier. I'm going to finish that tank off, and we'll get another wave of tanks.
Enemy spotted.
And it will keep going until my tank dies, which will happen very easily if I let them get to my companion tank. On occasion, we'll just hide out in a cubby hole. He'll be aiming at a tank on the other side of a building at him. And the tanks will walk up behind him, and he won't shoot at them. He does not get a lot of intelligence. The enemy tanks seem to get a little bit more, but maybe that's only because there are so many of them on the battlefield at one time. Okay, I've probably gone long enough here. I may encounter the YouTube limit with regard to size here, so I'm going to stop this recording, and I hope that helps you out with the game. If you're starting out, I anticipate doing more videos that may go into a little more detail with regard to strategy.